Mataji, for reminding me. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Pratamodhyayaha, Arjuna Visada Yogaha. 1.3. Pasyetam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tava Sishyena Dhimata.
O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Draupadi. Right now, this is a verse which is spoken by Duryodhana to Dronacharya. Right now, it is spoken to taunt his own teacher, right, to ensure that the teacher does not have any sympathy for his own student. Right now, Duryodhana's expectation was that the war would be over in half an hour. Right now, there were what 100 Kaurava brothers against 5 Pandavas. Right, and Krishna had promised not to raise a weapon during the war. Right? So therefore, he was just playing the role of a charioteer. Right now, the Pandavas had 7 Akshohinis, Kauravas had 11 Akshohinis. Right, so in any which way you dice it, Kauravas had the superiority in number, right, both in numerical strength, and they also had great personalities who were supporting them. Right, they had Bhishma, they had Drona, they had Kripacharya, and so on. Right, so Duryodhana is slightly perturbed to see the turnout for the Pandavas army. There are 7 of them, because he didn't expect them, because all of them had been at that point of time in the Vanvas. Right, they were in the forest for 13 years. They were in hiding for 1 year, so 12 plus 1 is 13. Right, so in spite of all that, he is surprised how did they turn out with 7 Akshohinis to fight for them. Right, so he wants to ensure that the people in his camp don't go off over to the other camp. Right, so he's addressing like this verse to his own teacher Dronacharya, because Arjuna to Drona always had a special heart, a special corner Drona had for Arjuna in his heart. Right, so Pashyatam, he says, Pashyatam means to see, Pandu Putranam, the army of the Pandavas. So he is asking Drona to look at the army of the Pandavas. Right, so just before going to war, Yudhishthira goes to Dronacharya and gets his blessing. Right, and then he goes to Bhishma and gets his blessing. Right, so both of them give him the blessing of Vijay Bhava, right, which means may you be victorious. Now that's what Yudhishthira did. Now what did Arjuna do? Arjuna, just before the commencement of the war, shot an arrow in the front of Dronacharya as a mark of respect and sought his blessings as his guru. Right, now that is a expression of gratitude. Correct, because of you I have known how to fight, I know how to use these weapons, therefore he says I seek your blessing, O guru. Right, and Dronacharya again says to Arjuna, Vijay Bhava. Right, so with that, pretty much the fate of the Kauravas was sealed. Right, but Duryodhana saw it otherwise. Right, his mind was, why are the Pandavas doing so much nakra, so much drama, so sentimental they are? So he goes to Dronacharya and he taunts him. Right, he says, Vyudham Draupada Putrena, that is your intelligent disciple, the son of Draupada. So reference here is made to Drishtadvimna. Now, who is Drishtadvimna? Drishtadvimna is the son of Draupada. Right, he is also the brother of Draupadi. He was the commander-in-chief at that point of time of the Pandavas army. Right, for the Kauravas at that point of time, it was Bhishma. Right, so Draupada and Drona were in the same Gurukul. It's very short story here, and they were best of friends. But later, they were the worst of enemies. Right, so much animosity was there between them that Draupada conducted a sacrifice to beget a son who would slay Drona. Right, and the best part is that Drona was aware of this, and yet he taught Drishtadvimna all the secrets of warfare. Right, so this is so because it was Drona's dharma to teach, right, without the fear of consequences. The reasoning was that one has to die anyway at any point of time, so I have to do my dharma, and in the course of doing my dharma, if I die, then so be it. So that was the reasoning why Dronacharya, in spite of knowing that Drishtadvimna was someone who was created to vanquish him, to slay him, he did not hold back any information, any tricks of the trade, so to speak. Right, So Duryodhan was apprehensive and angry that his teacher, that is Dronacharya, may take a soft stance against the Pandavas, right? So Duryodhana goes to Drona and taunts him. Hey, look at what you have done. You have taught them all the tricks of the trade, and now they have come to fight against you. You have erred in your judgment, right? And your disciples are not listening to you. So what sort of teacher are you, right? That's what his question is. So put this now in context to what I told you about how Yudhishthira and Arjuna behaved with, they conducted themselves with their teachers, right? They went and both got their blessings of their gurus before they started the war. And we compare it with what Duryodhana is doing here, right? So the object of Duryodhana was to get Drona angry, to ensure that he was not lenient, right? This approach ensures of Duryodhana, this approach of Duryodhana ensures that he does not succeed, right? Because basically right from the beginning, our Vedic culture throughout the ages has been that we should worship our teachers, our gurus, right? And we should never taunt them. But see, even before the inception of the war, Duryodhana commits this sin of going and taunting his own guru, right? And look at his expression here. So he's so angry, he's pointing fingers. That's why generally we don't point fingers at others, right? When you point fingers, it's always considered to be ill-mannered, bad conduct, right? So that is Duryodhana. The facial expression shows so much anger, right? How could you have taught them all these tricks, all these skills, right? Now, because that you have taught them all these, now look as what has happened to us. They are all now fighting against us. So that was Duryodhana's mode in which he is talking to Dronacharya. Okay, right. So this is the starting of the war. So let me just quickly take you through verses 12 to 15. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. After that, the conch shells, drums, bugles, trumpets, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya, Arjuna blew his Devadatta, and Bhishma, the ferocious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pandura, right? So all these have been concluded. Now the conch shells have been blown. So it is the inception of the war. The war is about to commence, right? Now, 1.19. Hare Krishna, Sloshna Mataji. In 1.19, the reaction of the blowing of these conch shells is stated, right? So it says the blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious and thus vibrating both in the sky and in the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra, right? So it's important that all the personalities below, I mentioned before, Bhishma, Yudhishthira, Sahala, Nakudev, all of them have blew their conch shells before the inception of the war, right? Now, importantly, just keep in mind that Arjuna's conch shell is called Devadatta, and Krishna's is called Panchajanya, right? And what did all this do? It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Okay, so that was the effect of blowing of all the conch shells, right? So this is verses 1.21 and 1.22.
Arjuna uvacha सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युता यावदेतान् निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामानवस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमोद्यमे.
So Arjuna says, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see those present here, who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Right now, Krishna may be the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the supreme Lord, but in this scenario, he is nothing but a charioteer of Arjuna, right? So he had already promised that he was not going to take arms in the battle. So as such, the general impression is that Krishna is not going to be of much use in the war. Right? But look at the language that Arjuna employs here while addressing his charioteer, right? So polite and so humble. He says, take this chariot Krishna, that is, oh infallible one, right? So that's how Arjuna addresses Krishna, oh infallible one, take my chariot between the two armies so that I am able to see who is present here, who desire to fight, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms, right? So he says, Senayor Ubayor Madhya, which means to take the chariot in the middle of the battlefield. So Krishna takes the chariot to the middle of the battlefield as per what Arjuna required, right? So 1.25.
भीष्मद्रोण प्रमुखतः सर्वेषां च महीक्षिताम् उवाच पार्थ पश्यैतान् समवेतान् कुरुनिति.
Partha Pasyetan. So Krishna, after he takes the chariot to the middle of the battlefield, says this: in the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, "Just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here." So this is the first verse that Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Now there is a difference here in the way it is presented. Now here it is just Krishna who is addressing, right? We'll see what happens in chapter 2. Right, how it changes in chapter 2, right? But for the present, just know that Krishna speaks only one verse in the first chapter. Okay, interestingly, Krishna purposely takes this chariot right in front of Bhishma and Drona, right? So the web of Maya is cast by Krishna on Arjuna at this place itself, right? Now Arjuna, you should remember, is not an ordinary person, right? He's a great devotee of the Lord, a very learned person. So how does he flounder? Because we'll see in just a few minutes what actually happens to Arjuna when he sees Bhishma and Drona and all his relatives who are opposing him, right? So this is a Maya that he is put under by Krishna so that the Bhagavad Gita can be retold to the world again, right? Now we have to understand that this arrangement is for our own understanding, right? So it's not just for Arjuna. Arjuna was put under that Maya by Krishna indirectly so that the message can be passed on to us, right? Now in this sloka, Krishna calls Arjuna as Partha, right? So Arjuna is the son of Kunti, right? So Kunti has another name called Pritha. So son of Pritha is Partha, right? So Partha Pashyatam. So Krishna says, see Arjuna. Pashyata means to see, right? And what does Arjuna see? The next two verses will make it evident. Right. And as I mentioned, this is the only verse that the Lord speaks in this chapter, right? So the real Bhagavad Gita starts from tomorrow. That's when Krishna starts explaining the concepts. But this chapter is important. I'll tell you why. Answers you can know, but then unless you know what the question is, you will not be able to understand what the answer is to, right? So unless you understand the question, that is chapter 1 deals with the questions, right? The questions that Arjuna is going to pose now to Krishna. Now, unless you understand the question, you will not be able to answer them, correct? It's like a question paper. A question is given, and unless you understand what is written in the question paper, you will not know how to answer it, correct? So therefore, it is that the first chapter, though Krishna speaks only one sloka in this, it is important in the sense that this is something that we can relate to, because we can understand. See, we have, Arjuna has in front of him so many of his relatives. His uncles are there, his fathers-in-law, parents-in-law, his Bhishma is there, Drona, his teacher, is there. So it is against them that he is going to fight with, right? So he gets 5 questions he poses to Krishna. We'll just examine that in this next 2-3 minutes, right? So 1.26. So what did Arjuna see? So Krishna says Pashitam, Partha Pashitam, right? So what does Krishna make Arjuna to see? Let's see. 1.26. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both the parties, his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his fathers-in-law and well-wishers, right? And in 1.27, the narration is, when the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with passion, with compassion. Okay, so as mentioned in the previous sloka, Arjuna sees what Krishna is is asking him to behold, right? So Arjuna beholds this scene and he sees all his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, all his relatives are there, right? And that is when the trouble starts for Arjuna, right? So when Arjuna saw this scene and observed the persons against whom he has to go and fight, he has a change of heart, right? He doesn't want to fight anymore. So as I mentioned, this is the mood of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's bewilderment and appearance of illusion must be understood to be Krishna's arrangement. So it's not for, if not for Arjuna's confusion and bewilderment, there would be no necessity for Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita to rescue him, correct? Right. Although Arjuna is apparently the first listener of the Bhagavad Gita, it is for the benefit of everyone, right? And now this is the crux of the first chapter, right? This is from slokas 1.28 to 1.45, the end of the chapter. Now, these are the reasons that Arjuna gives for his change of heart, right? The first reason that he gives is compassion. Now, Arjuna is totally distressed when he sees all these persons who are appearing before him. Now, he's a great warrior, right? No, make no doubt about that. Let there be no doubt about that. He is a great warrior. He can vanquish anyone, right? But then when you see people who have seen you grow, who have brought you up from your youngest days, then he is confused. He doesn't know what to do. He says, I have compassion for them, right? So that is the first ground on which Arjuna says, I'm not going to fight. So what is the first ground? The first ground is compassion. So Arjuna says, these are all my relatives. How can I fight them? I must have mercy upon them, isn't it? Let them live. So he follows this live and let live principle, right? So he asks, how do I kill Bhishma? He has seen me grow up. How can I kill Drona? He is my teacher, right? So this is called the Kripa Vishtam or the Daya Bhav, right? So that is the first ground on which Arjuna raises a point that I'm not going to fight this war. And then he goes on to say about the second ground, which is no enjoyment, right? This is in verse 1.31. Now, Arjuna says no enjoyment. Why? Because Arjuna says that there is no enjoyment in killing his own kith and kin, right? They're all related to him, right? So what is the purpose of this war? The purpose of the war is to get this kingdom back, right? But then Arjuna feels I shouldn't be killing my own family to get my kingdom back, right? So it doesn't give him any joy to kill his own brothers, right? So that is another reason that Arjuna gives. Now, the third reason that Arjuna gives is sin, right? This is in verse 1.36. Now, Arjuna says, if we kill them, he adds Krishna also in this verse, right? So he says, why does he add Krishna? Because Krishna is his charioteer, right? So he adds Krishna also, and it goes from singular to plural. So Arjuna says, if I kill or if we kill all these people who are in opposing us, then we will be caught in sin, right? Because killing is obviously sinful, right? So and Krishna being a charioteer will also be aiding vicariously in assisting in their killing, right? So he says you also will be liable for the sin, right? That is the third reason. Now, what the fourth reason is family traditions. That is in 1.45. So Arjuna says, if I kill all the male members, the family traditions would be destroyed, right? Their children will not have anyone to look after them, and their families would be ruined. Now, because of all these, Arjuna is under indecision. That is actually in the second chapter, but because it is related to this, I've included it here. That's in chapter 2, verse 6. So he is totally confused. He just does not know what is to be done. Now, see, make no mistake, Arjuna knows how to fight. He has not forgotten how to fight. But the question is, should I fight? Right? So that is the dismay, this lamentation that Arjuna is, are because of these 5 reasons. He is not able to decide whether he has to actually fight against his own relatives for the sake of a kingdom. Now, these are the grounds on which Arjuna says that I am not going to fight. So what are the grounds again? Let's see. Compassion, right? 2 is no enjoyment. 3 is sin. 4 is family tradition. 5 is indecision. Right now, in the next chapter, Krishna takes up each of these grounds and gives them a perfect answer as to why he should not be compassionate to who is fighting against on the other side, why there is enjoyment, why there is no sin, that there is no destruction of family traditions, and he tells Arjuna to be firm, decisive, right? All that we'll see in tomorrow's chapter, correct? Right. So quick question, let's just unmute. I think all of you can unmute yourselves, right? So a few questions. Let me see if you've understood so far. Or I'll tell you what. Okay, then. Okay. Can you tell me the reasons so far? I mean, since you've been listening to the class so far, so long, there are about several indicators that Pandavas are going to win the war at the outset itself, right? Now, what are those reasons? I think that there are at least 8 or 9 of them, right? Can anyone tell me a few of them? Anyone or any few of you all could just unmute and just tell me what could that be? Please feel free to answer.
They had the 7 Akshay Sena. Drona taught everybody from their side as well.
Yeah, right. Very nice. Okay, that's one of it. Yes, correct. Then the answer is there.
He had
Actually, there
Krishna
are a
with
couple of things
himself.
on the screen itself which will serve as clues.
Krishna was with him
Yes, wonderful.
as his
That's one of the
character.
answers I was looking for. Excellent. Then go on. Anyone else can also answer. Please go ahead.
Duryodhan insulted his teacher before, so that can count as sin on his side.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful. Yes, that's true. That's right. Then go on. Anything else? There are at least 9 of them. So well, I think we've covered about a few of them, but still there are more. Let's see. What do you see on the screen? There are 2 things on the screen itself which are indications.
The divine chariot.
Yes, chariot. Wonderful. Excellent. Then
And the flag.
yes, the
The
flag.
flag.
Correct. Very good. Very nice. Okay, so let's just quickly see what it is, right? This is the divine chariot which was given by Agni. But the first and the foremost thing is that it was fought in Dharmakshetra, right? This Kurukshetra. Right? The first verse starts with these words, right? Dharmakshetra, Kurukshetra. So the very fact that the battle is fought in a place of pilgrimage, a holy place, shows that the Pandavas are bound to win, because as between Kauravas and Pandavas, the Pandavas are definitely more virtuous, right? And then the second one is the chariot. This chariot was given by Agni, if memory serves, from Mahabharata, a little earlier, of course. The chariot was given by Agni. The bow of Arjuna was also given by Agni, the Gandiva bow, I think. Right. And then we have the Kapila Dwaja. This is the flag, which is also pointed out, right? So Hanuman was instrumental for Rama's victory. And so also he plays a role here. Correct. And then the next one is, as I mentioned, the Kapila Dwaja. And then we have the Shankanada, right? So we saw Sri Krishna blow his Panchajanya, right? And all the other personalities in the Pandava side blew their own conch shells, right? And so that was also an indication that it was going to be entirely in favor of the Pandavas, right? Then we have the Gandiva, which I already mentioned. And then we have the Tyakta Jivita. Tyakta Jivita is, it comes in the 9th verse of chapter 9, where Duryodhana says, all my soldiers are ready to die for me, right? So that starts off with an inauspicious note, correct? It is a risk that you go to war. It is possible that a person has to lay down his life, but then you don't go and say it right out at the beginning, right? So he starts out with an inauspicious word. So Tyakta Jivita is another reason, which is another indicator that the Pandavas are going to win. And then the war, of course, was started on Mokshada Ekadasi, right? Ekadasi we have again on the 17th of this month. So a few days before that, I'll be speaking on the importance of Ekadasi, right? So that is another reason why the indication was that the Pandavas would be successful. Then, of course, we have Bhagya Lakshmi. Wherever Krishna is there, the goddess of fortune is always with Krishna, correct? Lakshmi, Shri, is always with Krishna. So the goddess of fortune, Bhagya Lakshmi, is always with Krishna, and Krishna was with the Pandavas. And therefore, it is another indication that they are going to win the war. And then we have, of course, Hrishikesha himself, who was with the Pandavas, right? So all these reasons were reasons which indicated that they are going to win the war. And with that, we conclude today's class. So let's just quickly overview, have a quick rehash of what we studied. So the chapter opened with Dhritarashtra's inquiry, right? So Kim Akruvata Sanjaya. So what did they do? Having assembled in the battlefield, Dhritarashtra asks Sanjaya, what did they do? Then we saw about Duryodhana's fear, his anger, right? And then we saw about the blowing of the conch shells. Then we saw Arjuna's observation after having told Krishna to take him to the middle of the battlefield. Krishna says, behold, Arjuna, who are the people in front of you whom you have to fight? He sees Bhishma, he sees Drona, he sees all the great personalities on the other side, and then he has doubts. And he gives 5 reasons as to why he is not wanting to fight this war, right? So tomorrow we will see the answers that Krishna gives for all the 5 questions that Arjuna has posed. He says, I am compassionate. So how is it that I can go and wage war against my own relatives? He says, it is sinful. So why do you want me to go and fight with them? So all those 5 reasons we saw today, right? So let's see how Krishna answers them tomorrow, right? So let's conclude today's class with Guru Pranam. Om Angyana Timirandasya Jnananjana Slakaya Chakshurum Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance with the torch of knowledge. And this is the Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Right. So we have Salochana Mataji. After the Ashtakam, we can take up a few questions if there are any doubts from chapter 1. Okay. Let's see now. Hare Krishna Mataji. Let me just stop sharing.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Mataji.
Shall I start?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Chilanga Ketti. It's a Malayalam song.
Oh, okay.
Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo. Ende tamare kannadi adi vayo. Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo. Ende tamare kannadi adi vayo. Ninde pinju padam tedi tedi njangal. Ninde divyanamam padi padi vannu. Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo. Ende tamare kanna adi adi vayo. Devaki Nandana Radha Jivana Keshava Hari Madhava Putana Mardana Papa Vinashana Keshava Hari Madhava Gokula Balane Odivayo Gopala Balane Adivayo Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo. Ende tamare kannadi adi vayo. Kamsa vimardana Kaliya Nardana Keshava Hari Madhava Asrita Valsala Abad Pandava Keshava Hari Madhava Omkaranadane odivayo Ananda Gidame adivayo Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo Ende tamare kannadi adivayo Pandava Rakshaga Papa Vinashaga Keshava Hari Madhava Arjuna Rakshaga Ajnana Nashaga Keshava Hari Madhava Geetamridame odivayo Hridayanandame adivayo Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo Ende tamare kannadi adivayo Chilanga Ketti odi odi vayo Ende tamare kannadi adivayo. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Okay, I hope you all understood. I hope you're all on the same page. Question and answers. Any questions from chapter 1? Any verse which is in doubt, which was dealt with today? Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Will you be doing that demo of quiz, or will be starting with question and answer session directly?
Yeah, let the devotees try once, and if there's any problem, then we can explain it tomorrow. Okay.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Right.
So
Okay.
can we start with Q&A session?
Are there any questions relating to chapter 1? Any
Yes,
verses
Prabhuji.
any verses which are not clear?
There are a few questions in the chat box.
Mhm.
Shall I read?
Yeah.
First question is by Abhishek Dev. Why Arjun have seen Krishna killing his maternal uncle and Shishupala? Why was he having a problem to fight?
Okay, that I have to delve into Mahabharata right now. This is a Gita class, so let's keep the questions onto chapter 1. So each day the question and answer session will be not from everywhere, questions everywhere. It takes off the root. See, in order to answer that question, I had to say who Shishupala was. I have to say what was that 100 reasons why Krishna had promised his mother, Shishupala's mother, that he will excuse Shishupala 100 times. I have to explain why Shishupala had that attitude to Krishna. There's so many things to explain before I answer that question. That is not the object of this class. Let us keep the question straightforward to the chapter, okay, that we just dealt with. All these questions take the message away. See, they are more of a distraction than anything else. So let's keep the questions to the chapter, please.
Next question is by Parul Mataji. The bow of Arjuna was given by?
Bow of Arjuna was given by Varuna. I think I said Agni, right? I'm sorry. The chariot was given by Agni. Bow, I think, was given by Varuna. Next. These are short answers. These I can give. It's only when explanations are required, which are not in the Gita, it's a problem. Okay. Then raised hands are also most welcome. I'd actually prefer raised hands because it then gives an impression of speaking to someone, right? I mean, apart from Neha Mataji, of course, Neha Mataji has been there a long time. But apart from Neha Mataji, even if the devotees feel like asking a question instead of posting it on the chat box, please feel free. Hare Krishna. Rupali Mataji, go ahead, please. And I must thank you, Rupali Mataji, for keeping your camera on, because otherwise it's like I speak to slides, tiles rather. So thank you for giving me that impression that I'm speaking to someone instead of just tiles in the screen. Thank you for keeping your screen on.
Thank you.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead. What's your question? Yes, Mataji, what's your question? Oh, you raised your hand. I'm sorry. I thought you had a question. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other questions pertaining to chapter?
No, Prabhu.
Chapter 1 is clear. We'll do one thing.
Yes.
Tomorrow we'll start off. I mean, after the recitation. Oh, it's a long chapter tomorrow, correct? Okay, so then let's see. But I wanted to have an interaction with the devotees, all young people, right? So it's always a pleasure to have. Okay, let's see how tomorrow. By what time we complete the recitation, and then when class starts, because tomorrow is a lengthy chapter. So let's see how it turns out. So with that, I think we can conclude today's class. If there are any other questions pertaining to chapter 1, we can take it up. Any raised hands? Nothing. Okay. That's it, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Very well explained. We don't have any doubts.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much. So I'll stop the recording now, and we'll meet tomorrow. Please be regular to class. It's all try not to miss a class. Okay, it's one thing is to hear the message of the Bhagavad Gita itself is a blessing. Okay, it's not given to all. See, we had about 100 200 people in the group, and how many people we have in the class? We have only 40, right? So even if you register for the Bhagavad Gita class, unless it is in your praptam, they say, no, praptam, unless it is there, you are not going to hear the message. So please make that effort to be regular to class. Okay, it's 40 now, going on, perhaps it is going to be hopefully maintained, right? There's another question, Mataji, in the chat box. So is there a name to all the conch shells? Bhagavad Gita gives the names of all the conch shells, which is blown by famous personalities. Bhishma has a conch shell. Bhishma's conch shell is called. Let me just give you a moment. Memory is failing. Just give me a moment. Neha Mataji, you should be able to recall immediately.
Pondra Prabhuji.
Pondra, correct? Yeah, correct. That's very nice, Mataji. Thank you. That was Pondra was Bhima's, and Panchajanya was, of course, Krishna's. Arjuna's was Devadatta, and let's see, we had a few others also, right? Yeah. So King Yudhishthira's conch shell is Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva. Nakula's is Sughosha, and Sahadeva's is Mani Pushpaka, right? So they all had conch shells which were named, right? So they have popular conch shells, right? So I hope that is clear. Do see if it's possible for you, please, after the class is over, do take up the quiz, and if time permits, just try and read through the Gita, this book that I've got. I showed this book earlier, right? The Bhagavad Gita as it is. Just try and go through a few verses. Then we can discuss it in the next class if you have any doubts in those verses. So that will actually improve your understanding of the Gita, because we are not going to deal with each and every verse because we don't have the time, right? So we will be focusing only on the important slokas, the relevant ones, the more relevant ones, right? So if it's possible, just have a cursory glance at this at the slokas, and if you have any doubts, and I'm sure you will, because once you start reading it, there are so many questions that will prop up, right? So please do take up that little amount of extra effort, and let's meet tomorrow, right? Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining today. Right.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.